தமிழ் செல்வன் சார்.
சொல்லுங்க மேம். ஹலோ சொல்லுங்க மேம், கேக்குது.
Sir, you can
Sure, okay. Yeah.
Start, sir. Thank you.
Hi guys, good morning. Let's get started for today's session. Let me share my screen. Can you all see my screen? Can everyone confirm? Already, thank you for confirming. Yeah, thank you. Just give me a second. Already, yeah. So the topic for today's session is for last 2 days. So we are seeing some basics before starting with React. So what are all the concepts that we saw? So how to install Node, and then we saw how to install npm. So it comes bundled with Node.js itself. So your npm comes bundled with your Node.js. So that's what we saw. And we saw some commands with respect to npm, something like install, config, and uninstall and other things. So that's what we saw in the first class. Okay, and then we saw what is the specific with respect to JavaScript. Okay, so for example, the JavaScript things that we basically use when we start with React. Okay, that's what we saw. So yesterday we saw these concepts, major concepts like what are the variables that are available, and then what are objects, and what are also something called this, arrow functions, and other things. Okay, so the only left out topic for yesterday is modules. Okay, so we'll see it first. Okay, then the agenda for today is, so we'll be seeing some theoretical things with React. Okay, so basically today I will be showing off some PPT and explain you what is a React and how it is working and other things. Okay, and if time permits, we can start with creating a sample app. Okay, so that's the thing that we are going to see today, and that's the agenda. Okay, yeah. Before starting on with the topic, I told you, so I'm going to explain you about the modules. Okay, so yesterday we saw till this. Okay, so let's see the last concept, something called modules. Okay, so let's get started. Yeah. So let me go ahead and create a file called modules.js here. We'll have something called module1.js. Okay, so what's a module? So that's the question here. So whatever the JS file that we have here inside our application, that particular module, particular file is nothing but a module. Okay, for example, objects.js is something like we can have it as a name called objects module. Same way for arrows, arrow function, and everything is a module over here. Okay, so basically, why do we need module here? So that's the concept here. So we cannot write all the application logics and all the application controllers and other things in one file, right? So that's not a good coding practice. So for example, you have a application, something like student management system. Okay, what are all the concepts behind the student management system? So we can create a student and we can edit, delete, and we can edit the particular student and delete it and update them and other. Yeah. So same way, we have another module concept, like something like we will be listing all the students in the student management system. Same way for teachers, mentors, and fees payment and other things. Okay, so this is basically a student management system. So we cannot write every logics or every component in just like one JS file over here. Okay, so that's why we need something called a module. Okay, so we can split them into different files. For example, if you want to list the particular list all the students detail, we can have something called student list module. For example, here we can create a module called student list. Okay, same way for student form, like adding them, editing them, and other things. Same way for deleting, and same way for updating as well. Okay, so that's what we basically use for that is what a module is. Okay, so module is nothing but, so we will be separating our every files or every concepts or every features into a different file, something called modularization. Okay, so let's see, so how to create a module and how to use them in different files and how to import them, how to export them, and other things. Okay, so let's see it in action now. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is, so I will create a function here. Okay, something like print or log message. Okay, I can have something like this. Okay, and here I can have a name for this. Okay, so you can have anything. So I will have something called log.js. Okay, so here what I'll do is, whatever the message, it takes a message. Okay, and I'm going to console it. Okay, very simple. So I'm not taking a very big example over here, just giving a console here. Okay, message, simple. Okay, so this particular message function is accessible only inside this particular module, right? So log.js. So if you call something like log message here, okay, and send some message like hello Ruby over here. Okay, and I'm going into the particular module. So see this. Okay, so if I want to run this, I can have something called node log.js. Okay, so it's printing. Okay, simple function, and it has, I just called them. Okay, suppose I need to access this particular log message from different files, for example arrow function, something like this, and something like another file and other things. Okay, what I'll do is I'll create something called index.js. Okay, so one more file. Okay, for example, if I want to use this particular log message, this particular function here in my index.js. Okay, so how can I do that? So that's the question here. Okay, so now log.js is like something like a module, one module. Okay, so you can have a name called something like this. So you can assume that this is something called logging module. Okay, so we can have something like this. I just have a name here. Okay, so that's not an issue. Suppose if I want to access this particular log message function, okay, from my index.js or in a different file, how can you do that? So that's the question here. So that's where we have something called export. Okay, so export default, okay, log message. Okay, so if you do this, you can import anywhere that you need, whenever you need. Okay, for example, my index.js. So I have exported it. So how did I export it? So I export default log message. Okay, so there are two types of export. Okay, one is default export, and one is named export. Okay, so named export. So there are two types of yeah, so there are two types of things here. Okay, so now I'm using default export. I will show you the difference between the default and the named export. Okay, first I will go with the default. Okay, default is nothing but whenever you import this particular logger module in any file, you can directly access the log message here. Okay, so see here now, I need to use this particular log message function. Okay, see the syntax. So import. Okay, here you can use any file. Okay, so I can use the same name here, log message from. Okay, so what is the module here? So see here, if we have the inbuilt modules, for example, I told you, right? So npm installed ESLint, npm installed React, and other things. Okay, if you want to import a module that are in package.json, for example, in package.json, I have something called Lodash. Okay, if I want to import them, I can use it in this way. Okay, same way, if you want to import your own modules, like custom modules, okay, you can have something like this. See here now. So this is current folder. If you want to go out of the folder, okay, we need to have one more dot over here. See, so all the folders here, packet just everything is available. Okay, so if you have one dot, okay, so if you have one dot, it will show the files that are in the current folder. Okay, so where I'm going to from import from my log.js, right? So import log message from log. Okay, simple. You need not mention like log.js. By default, it takes like log.js as log. Okay, so you can just mention the file name, not like .js. Okay, so that's not needed. So now I have exported it. Okay, I can use it directly here. Okay, so I can call the log message function here. I can send my message, for example, the same function, hello, Gooby over here. Okay, simple. So now if I call node index.js, cannot use import statement outside a module. What's happening here? Okay, sorry. Just to give me a minute, I need to set a configuration here. So now this is acting as a Node.js. Okay, so in order to do that, I need to set this concept. Okay, so now what happening here? We don't need to use parentheses to export. No, we don't need that. Okay, so basically, if you want to use direct, if it is a direct export, okay, so if it is a direct default export, you can call them directly over here. Okay, so if I do this, okay, so here, what happening here is I set a configuration something called type equal to module here. Okay, this is a configuration we basically set. Okay, so when we use ES6 concepts here. Okay, so previously before ES6, how we will be exporting the modules here is, see, modules dot export. Okay, and that particular message here. Okay, so module dot export. So this is how we will be exporting the module dot export. Okay, but later in ES6, okay, we use something called export default. Okay, so in order to enable ES6, okay, we need to use something called type equal to module here. Okay, so you need not concentrate much on this. Okay, so because why I'm getting an error here is, so I was getting some error, right? So this is something I took an example of Node.js here. Okay, in Node.js we basically use module.export. Okay, in the case of React we use something called export default. Okay, so that's the thing. So that's why your model it was throwing in some error. Okay, so now I set a configuration here. Okay, so you need not concentrate much on them. In the React part, your configurations are being set directly. Okay, so what you need to have here is same way. You need not mention like log.js here, but in the case of Node.js, you need to use it in this way. Okay, so that's the thing. So now see, so what you need to grab from this particular logic here is you have a function here. You can export you can export that particular function over here like export default. This is a default export. Okay, so default export. Okay, if you want to access them from outside the module, for example, log.js only has the log message here, right? If I want to access them outside the file, okay, so you need to export them first. Okay, so export default log message. If you want to import, you need to import in the log.message, right? The log message from your index.js, because I'm going to use it here. So import log message. Okay, you can have any name here. Okay, so you can have logging or you can have any name. Okay, so that is what your default export does. Okay, so logging. Okay, same. I can have any name over here. Okay, if I call that, it will be working here. Okay, same way. This is something called the default export. Okay, so by default, it is exporting your log message. Okay, suppose if you want to have some named export. So what is named export is, you are going to mention a particular name to a function. For example, if I use I can use multiple things. Okay, see here now. So export const. For example, I need to. It's not like I can export function. You can export anything like variable, JSON, and whatever the things. For example, I'm going to export a particular variable. For example, what can I have? So test or name. Okay, so name. Okay, equal to Gooby here. Okay, simple. So if you have it in this way, it's just a normal variable. Okay. If you use export, it can be accessible from anywhere in your JS files. Okay. So this is something called your named export. So now how can you import that? So that's the question here, right? So in the case of default export, you just had the name here. Okay. You can directly call that particular function. Okay. But now you have something called named export. Okay. In order to access the name, what is the name that you mentioned here? Name, right? Or you can have something called app, whatever the things you can have here. So you need to import in this name only, like app here. Okay. So how can you import here? See here now. So you need to import it in this way. So if it is a named export, you need to have a curly braces here. Okay. So curly braces, inside that, you need to mention the name that you exported. Okay. So see, so here, app. Okay. So if I console them, okay, so I can console the app here, right? App. Okay. Simple. So if I console them, see, it is exported. Same way, you can have anything. You can have number, you can have object, you can have JSON, you can have classes. So that's what someone asked me in the chat. So can we export class? Obviously. So in React, we will be exporting classes only. So everything is a class in React. We can export anything. So yes, so that's what. So now in this case, you have given a name to your export const app. So in this name only, you need to import them here. Okay. So this is a concept of your named export. In the case of default export, we can directly call log message here and import them. Okay, something like this. So log message, and you can send any name over here. Okay. So GUI. So if I run them, it will give me the value. Okay. So log message of GUI. Suppose if you want to have both the thing, so I have exported both the thing, right? So one is default export and one is a named export. If you want to access both of them, okay. So see, so previously it was something like this, right? So this is log message. This is something called your default export. You can have any name. I can have something called logging here, and you can combine them. So for the named export, we can have it in this way. Okay, something like this is the name here, right? So app. So this is a default export. This is a named export. Okay. So see here now. So I will use that particular logging function now. Okay, and I can pass the name over here. Simple as that. Okay. So what is the name? What is the app I will be getting? The GUI here, right? And that particular GUI is passed to the logging function. It will just log that message here. Okay, let's see. See, it is working as exported. So we explained what is a default export and how to import them. You can directly have any name. It's not like you can have it in this name alone. Okay, you can have it in any name. Same way, if you want to have named export, it can be anything like a function. You can even mention a function here. For example, so const something like logging. Okay, you can even have named export. Okay, something like you need to import it this way. In the case of named export, something like this. Okay, you can have it in this way also. So see, it is working as exported. So you can export it in any way. Okay, so this is something called default. Okay, this is something called export. Export is nothing but you are going to give a name to that particular function or a variable. Okay, if you want to import default export, you need to directly give a name here. You can give any name. In the case of named export, so whatever the name that you mentioned here, that needs to be used here inside that, and you can have them used in your application. Okay, clear? No, you cannot have multiple default export. It will overwrite. So if you have something like this, and then if you have something like here, if you have any other things, something like this, okay, this particular log message will be overwritten here. Okay, so that's the thing. So there can be only one default export. Clear? So clear on the export part. So this is something called module. Okay, so log is a module. We just exported it and imported them in your index.js and just worked on them. Okay, so here. How to name the export in function. I showed you just now, right? So you can have the same here. You can anyways named export is nothing but you are going to give a name. That's it. Okay. So logging here, okay, so just a name here, assign that particular function, simple, okay. So you need to just use, instead of having here imported as this way, we can import it in this way, okay. So that's what basically does. Clear? So I'll remove them again. We need to have the same logics here, okay. Okay, so why should we use default? It depends. So it depends on the scenario here, okay. In some files, you have only one import, okay. For example, here I showed you two things exported, okay. In some files, you have only one thing to be imported. So in React, every component will be only one component things, or one class can be, we get a need that only one class needs to be exported. In that case, we will be using default, okay. So in React, mostly we'll be using default only, okay. So this is very rare. We don't use them much, okay. So we basically use default export because there is only one class. So in the case of here, we have function, right? So we will have some class here and export them. That's the only difference, okay. So basically we'll be using default only in our React part, okay.
Tamil,
Yeah,
yeah,
yes.
on index.js.
Here,
Yeah. Here at the line number 1, you had mentioned the path /log.js.
yes.
So like .js we have to mention for Node.js or for React.
No, that's what. So okay, I will be clear on that, okay. So I'm writing my React part in a node environment, okay. So in the node environment, in order to have the import and export things in my node environment, I need to use a setting called type equal to module in my package.json. That's one configuration, okay. One another thing is, whenever you import it, you need to use .js here, okay? If you don't mention it, it will throw you an error. But if we go to a React environment, so I will show you the React environment. There, we'll be using the same export, the import, and everything, but we will not be basically using .js here. Okay, your React will consider them. Okay, same way, these configurations are done by default in your React itself.
Okay.
So that's the thing. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So quick summary. So I'll give you a quick summary now. Okay. So you can have anything in your file. For example, log.js, you can have anything. It can be a function, it can be a variable, it can be a number, or anything, or JSON, everything. Okay. If you want to have them accessed outside this particular file, okay. For example, I have a function called log message. This log message is accessible only inside this particular file. Okay. Suppose if I want to have this log message function accessible from outside any of the file, like something like array function or whatever thing. Here I took an example of index.js. So in that case, you need to export them from your file. Okay. For example, I'm exporting log messages here. Okay. So there are two ways of exporting. One is default and one is named export. Named export is nothing but you are giving a name to that particular thing. Like it's now in the case of here, I have a function here. Okay. Suppose if I use named export, okay, I need to mention a name so that your index.js file will import it in that particular name. For example, here in the case of named export, I use something called consider this is something called a name here. Okay, so some basic variable const app equal to GUI. Okay, so if I just add export over here, okay, I can import them in this particular name, and this is something called named export. Okay, something like if I want to export them, I need to use something called curly braces here. Okay, and have them imported. Okay, same way you can have anything. For example, here, so you can have something called age. Okay, you can export even a number. Okay, and you can just give like app comma age. Okay, so both will be imported here. Okay, same way you can have object, you can have array and everything. Okay, you can have anything over here. Okay, that's something called named export. So whatever the name that you give here, you need to import it in this way. Okay, same way there is something called default export. So for default export, so there can be only one default export in your whole module. Okay, what it means is you can directly import that particular file in any name. Okay, for example, I can call my logging. It can log. It can be log message, and whatever the name you can give. Okay, so whatever that you give in your default export, that will be available in this particular variable here. Okay, for example, here I have default exported my function here. Okay, that log message function is available in my index.js in the name of logging. Okay, or if it is confusing for you, you can have the same name. It's not an issue at all. Okay, so this is something called default export. Okay, if you want to have named export, you need to have it in this way. That's the thing. Okay, so we can have multiple named export instead of default. Exactly. Yeah, you can have multiple named export. Okay, even in the default export also, what you can do here is, okay, so here you can have it as an object. Okay, something like this, and you can have log message here, and you can have your, for example, you can even do in this way. Okay, this is something like an hack. See here now. So in the default export itself, I can have my both the thing here. Okay, in the case of an in the means of an object now. Okay, so now what you can do here is, by default log message and app will be available. For okay, how it is here is, so we can have it in this way. So this is a default export, right? So something like I can have something called logger here. Okay, so logger, inside logger, what will be there? My log message and app. Okay, so what I'll do is I will console and show you. So console.log of logger here. Okay, so if I do this, see my log message function and app equal to GUI is available. Okay, so you can do it in this way also. Okay, so if you don't want to use the named export, okay, so in this way. So now it is an object, right? So the object that has log message function and the app here, app equal to GUI over here. Okay, so then you can use it in the kind of a named export. How can you do it here? So this is basically object, right? You can use something called a object destructuring. So inside logger, I have two things. One is log message and one is app. Okay, so you can call it in this way, log message of app again. Okay, so the same default export I just showed you in the case of an example of an object here. Okay, so if I run this, okay, I need to have a name here. So should work, right? Okay, let's not provide an export named. Here it is in the name of log message. Okay, console.log of app here. Okay, so okay, so if I run this, how is it not? Okay, so logger. Okay, sorry, you need to access in this way. Okay, okay, so here logger here. Okay, so I just console it and showed you. It is an object. Okay, it is having something called log message function. It is having something called app. Okay, and it is if you can see here, log message function and app is available. Okay, same way you can add many properties to here, something like this. Okay, you can have something called age here and mention something like 12 here, and you can add some more properties. Okay, but whenever you access them here, okay, sorry, I was showing you the object destructuring, right? So in the case of default export, you cannot use it. It will not work. It will take it as a named export. Okay, so you can have it. You can have a hack, something like this. Okay, you can have it in this way. Okay, what you need to do here is logger dot. So what are all the properties available? Log message. Inside that, something like logger dot app, something like this. You can call them. Okay, so it will work as expected. GUI here. Okay, so that's the thing. So there are multiple ways to import it. It depends on the situation. Okay, so if it is like confusing for you, you can have a named export, something like this. Okay, so log message over here. Okay, and you can have even a default export. Okay, something like export app. Okay, you can even mention in this way. Okay, so here it is. Sorry. Okay, you can even mention in this way. Okay, so now this is, I just want to show you both the examples. So default and the named. Okay, in the case of default, you need to use something like this. In the case of something like named export, you need to have it in this way. Okay, now you can call the logger function directly, and you can call the app directly. Okay, and it would work as expected. Yeah, even in default you can have an object here. Okay, the same way you can have any other things. That's what the hack that I showed you. So you can have log message here. Okay, I will show that scenario also. So we can have same something like this. Okay, and you can have log message here. Okay, you can even have anything like age equal to 12, something like this. Okay, so by default, okay, if you print your logger function here, okay, it will give you the details something like this. So the function and the age equal to 12. Okay, both will be available here. Okay, so basically you need to have it in this way. Okay, one is your default export, one is your named export. If you want to have multiple values to be imported, you just use named export. If you want to have only one function, something like here, there is only one module, right? So logging the message, we can have it in this way, like export default. We don't need this anymore. Okay, or if you want to have this imported in a named export, you need to just add something like whatever the name that you want. So const log here. Okay, and you need to import that particular in this way. So log comma app and call that particular function. Okay, so that's the thing. Okay, clear on this default and the named export? So I could get some questions over here. Can you export from index, do some operation, export it back to index? What does export? Okay, you can have anything imported, even index.js. Okay, you can have something like exported here. Okay, each and everything is a module. Okay, you can consider them as a module. You can export everywhere. You can even export this function, everything. Okay, so that's not an issue at all. So then, but there is no longer in the log.js file, right? How to import if there are multiple exports? That's what I showed you here. Okay, so we can have anything, something like age. Okay, and you can have 23, and you can have something, you can import it in this way. Okay, multiple export, you can just give comma comma comma. Okay, so you can have multiple, something like this. Okay, if I console it, okay, it cannot be console. This is logger function. Logger function takes only one message. Okay, so if you console your age here, okay, see 23 is available. So this is how we need to import, export multiple things and import in the same name, app and age. Okay, that's what. So but there is no logger keyword in the logger file, right? Yeah, that's what I told you. In the default export, you can have any name mentioned here. Okay, and you can import it in any name. That's the thing here. Okay, only in the named export you need to use that particular name. In the case of default export, you can export it in any name. Okay, so for example here I can export in the log message name. Okay, you can import it in any name, something like this random thing. Okay, even if you call that, okay, it will work as expected. See, so that's the thing with your what I need to say here. So that's the thing with your default export. Okay, yeah, so for clear on this, so clear on the concepts of import and export. Can you move on to the React part? Yes, there can be only one default export. Alrighty, okay. So now your basics are done. Okay, so I have explained you what are some modules and how it works. Okay, so let's move on to some React part now. Okay, so already took, okay. Just give me a second. Okay, let's get started. So before starting with React, do you guys have any understanding on React, and do you guys learned it or hear it of? So how it works and other things? Okay, have you worked on jQuery? So have you heard of jQuery and worked on them? Okay, already, okay, no worries. So let's move on to React now. Okay, so React here. Okay, So the first thing that we are going to see in our React session is, and bear with me, and today completely it's theory session. Okay, so you need to grab certain things from here. Okay, so I will show you, show it in action now. Okay, so that's not an issue, but have some extra effort on this. Okay, so the agenda for today is, so I'll be giving you two things. One is introduction to React. Okay, so basically what it covers is like what, why, and why should you learn that. Okay, so that's the thing that we are going to cover today. Okay, so what is a React? So that's the question here. So basically, in the case of like HTML, JS, and HTML, how did you build your application? So using JS, so you will have some HTML elements. Okay, so that are that's something like a paragraph tag and some combinations of tag. Okay, so in order to access that particular tag, okay, so we basically use JavaScript to have to have do some manipulations over there, like on click we need to do certain functions or certain logics to be done. Same way on hover, on change, and you can have some event listeners to that particular input element and other things. Okay, so this is what basically you do whenever you build an application. You basically have HTML and JS and some CSS. Okay, but in the case of React, what comes here is React is nothing but a library. Okay, so that's what even if you go to the documentation of React.js, okay, they will say it as a lightweighted library. Okay, so it's a JavaScript library that is going to help us in building some user interfaces. Okay, so what is a user interface? So we basically say it as UI. Okay, so what is a user interface? So if you go on to any websites, something like I can have so this is a GUI's website. Okay, so this is something called user interface. Okay, so for example, this particular button, and this is a nav bar, and this is in certain color, this is in green color, and everything you see here it is in UI. Okay, so you have already built UI using HTML and using JavaScript. Okay, same way in React, what it comes here is it is going to reduce our efforts. Okay, that basically that is the purpose of a library. Okay, so whenever you use a library in your application, it can be anything like Python or any other language. The library is nothing but that is going to reduce the developer's effort. Okay, so that's the thing here. Same way, React is a JavaScript library that is going to reduce our effort on building the user interface. Okay, so that's what your React does. Okay, so basically that is the first thing that you need to know. So whenever there may be a questions like what is a React and other things. Okay, you need to just give this proper definition over here. Okay, so then I show you can see here user interfaces for front end, web, and mobile applications as well. So how come mobile applications go over here? Okay, so using React. So what we mean here is, if you know React, okay, you can easily learn a mobile programming language, something called React Native. Okay, so React is to build web application. React Native is to build your mobile application. Okay, so that's the thing. So, but the basics for both the React and React Native is same. Okay, so for example, in React we have something called components, states, properties, and everything, which is very specific to your mobile applications as well. So if you are very strong in the basics of React, you can easily crack React Native as well. Okay, so that's something called a short intro of what is a React. Okay, so then some basic history. So it has been created by Jordan Walk. So as you know, React.js is developed by Facebook. Okay, and it was by a person called Jordan Walk. He is a software engineer in Facebook. Okay, initially what happens here is this is a library that has been built only for the Facebook. Okay, so not for the users worldwide. Okay, so what happens here is later in 2011, okay, so what they have done here is they have used it in the newsfeed feature. So in the Facebook we have something called newsfeed, right? So we'll be scrolling over the feeds and we'll be seeing there, right? So you can see that how millions of data has been populated in the Facebook, and it's rendering without any glitch. Okay, so how it is happening, and they built a framework called React in their own their own company, and they used it. Okay, then because of its power, okay, what they have done is they have made it as an open source, so that every developers in the world can use React, okay, and they can make use of it. Okay, so that's how your React has been invented. Okay, initially it was used by Facebook, then they made it as an open source, and so that every developers can use it. Okay, so that's how it came. Then it got a big something like big boom in the industry, and it made a great impact on other companies as well. So everyone is migrating to React now. So that's why it's an industry trend. Okay, so then React is sometimes called as a framework because of its features and behaviors. Okay, so what it means. So what is a framework basically? So we have learned some CSS framework, like I think it's Bootstrap. Did you learn it? Okay, so if you know what is a Bootstrap, so what it does for us, can anyone answer? So why we say it as a framework? Yeah, okay. So any other answers? Why do we say?
Bootstrap,
Yeah.
when we minimize the screen, so the UI should match to the screen size. So dividing the entire screen into different columns.
No. My question is, so what is a framework and why do we need it? So you use Bootstrap, you can write CSS, right? So why do we need Bootstrap then? So that's my question. Okay, I will say it. Okay. So there is a major difference between a framework and a library. Okay. So framework is nothing but it's a set of instructions or set of protocols that you need to follow in order if you use that particular library. For example, in the case of Bootstrap, okay, so if you want to have a container kind of a CSS, so you need to use something called class name called container. Okay, same way for attaining the size of the screen, something like large. For if you want to have the CSS for large screen, you will be using a CSS class called LG. Same way for medium like MD and other things. Okay, same way for alert, you need to use certain class name. Okay, so you have a set of instruction or set of things that needs to be followed if you want to abide by that particular framework called Bootstrap. Okay, so if you need to use Bootstrap, you need to know those CSS, those classes. When you use that particular CSS only or that particular class name only, you can come up with that Bootstrap design. Okay, so what it means is, what is a framework here? Framework is nothing but a set of rules that you need to follow in order to do that. Okay, so the same way, React is a library. Okay, so this is something called a framework. Okay, so what is the library then? So library is nothing but a set of logics. You can use it in your application, or you need not abide by that particular rule. For example, I told you an example of Lodash here, right? So I told you an example of Lodash. So okay, so this is a library we use. Okay, so what is the purpose of Lodash? Okay, so Lodash gives us some utility function. So what is a utility function here is, you have an array. So for example, if you want to pluck out the even numbers from that particular array, so what is the logic that you basically use? So we basically use the remainder operator, like remainder operator, and then we'll be giving 2. And whenever there is a remainder 0, okay, divide by 2. If there is a 0 remainder, then it is something called even number. So that's the logic you basically use, right? So in the case of yes, exactly. So someone mentioned in the comments. Okay, so in the case of Lodash or other libraries, they give it in as a separate function as well. Okay, for example, is even, is sort, something like that. Okay, I'm just saying you an example. Okay, same with this is library. You can use or you may not use it. Okay, so that's something called your library. Okay, but if you use a framework, so if you go on to other libraries like Angular or Vue.js and other things, there it is a framework. Okay, so you need to abide by the rule of your framework. You need to place your code where they suggest. Okay, you cannot write your code anywhere. But in the case of library, you can just plug and play. Okay, you can have the React plugged into your application, or you may not. Okay, so that's the difference between a framework and a library. Okay, so in one word, what can I say the difference between the library and the framework is nothing but your code will be run by your framework. Okay, it will be ran by your framework basically. Okay, but in the library we'll use the library and we run the code is in our control. But in the framework, the code is not in our control. It's the control of your framework. So if you use Angular, okay, your complete code is under control of your Angular. But in the case of library, okay, the code is in our control. You can write it in any way that you need. Okay, so that's something called your React. Okay, so React is sometimes called as a framework because of its features. So it has some features like a virtual DOM and other things. We will show it in the next section. Okay, so that's the difference between a library and a framework. Okay, so there may be questions in your interview. Okay, so they will ask you a question. So what is the difference between a library and a framework? So basically what you need to say here is, in a framework, you need to follow the set of rules that have been given by that particular framework, and everything is under control of the framework. Okay, so you cannot write it in your way, your own way. Okay, so there is a rule that you need to follow. But in the case of library, the code is in our control. You can write wherever you need. Okay, and you can just plug in. You need not plug in or what. It's up to you. Okay, code is in your control. Okay, so that's the difference between your framework and the library. React is a completely library. Okay, you can plug in and play. Okay, and sometimes it will be called as a framework because of its some features and how it works. Okay, so that's the thing here. And so that's the basic intro of what is a React. Okay, so someone asked me what is a React and React Native. So React is to build your web application. React Native is to build mobile application. Okay, so that's the difference between them. Nothing other than that. Okay, so this is the basic intro of what is a React. Okay, so let's move on to the next section. So why should you use or why should you learn React? Okay, so that's the question here. So these are all the points that are attracting the industry or the developers to use it. Okay, first thing is everything is reusable in React. Okay, so you can build once and use it anywhere. So that's the main feature of your React. Okay, then we have something called a concept called virtual DOM, and then we have something called Jsx. And why should you learn React? Because it's an industry trend. Okay, that's why you need to learn React. And the next point is, so it's easy to learn. That's what I told you. So your React can be like if you're having great focus, you can complete your React by like 2 weeks. You can complete them. Okay. And one other thing is, why should you learn React? If you know the basics of React, you can build React Native applications. Okay, that's why I have the point here. No, we'll not be covering the React Native part here. Okay, so this is only for your web. So we'll be majorly focusing on Node.js, React, and MongoDB and other things. Okay, so yes, so we will go in depth with the concepts in reusable and virtual DOM and other things. Okay, so let's get started now. So what is a DOM? So can anyone answer what is a DOM? Yeah, we'll come each and every topic. We'll see each and every topic deeply now. Okay, I will explain about the Jsx as well. So can anyone explain what is a DOM? Okay, I could get the full form. So, but basically, what is a form? What is a DOM? Exactly, someone mentioned it. 3 representation of your HTML. Okay, so if you are going to certain site, something called GUI here. Okay, or you can have any websites. Okay, so what comes here is, what is a DOM here is, DOM is nothing but, as you mentioned, DOM is to something like document object model. So what is a document object model? Okay, so please, I'm stressing it. See here, document object module. Okay, so what it means here is, this is your HTML. Okay, so this is your HTML document. Okay, converting your HTML document into a certain kind of an object thing is nothing but your document object model. See, for example, in the case of a normal HTML function here. Okay, I will have HTML here. Okay, we will be basically have head. Okay, and then we can have head closed here. Same way for body. can have a body close here, and we can have the HTML over here. Okay, just give me a minute. Okay, so HTML and head. Okay, so inside the head, what do you basically have? So for example, I can have something called title. Okay, so here title, I can give something called GUI app. Okay, something like this. Same way inside the body, I can have some paragraph tag. I can have something called hello GUI. Okay, so this is the thing now. So this is how your HTML document looks. Okay, so what is a DOM here? So that's the question here. Okay, this is an HTML DOM. Okay, so how your DOM looks here is, consider it as a tree kind of a structure. Okay, so here, so I'm going to show you the example here. So we have HTML. Okay, inside HTML, what are all the tree structure here? So one is your head. Okay, and one is your body. Inside your HTML, there is something called head, and one is body. Okay, so inside HTML, we have something called head, and we have something called body. Okay, so consider as a tree structure, something like this. Okay, HTML, head, and body. Okay, so then what we have inside head, we have something called title. Okay, so inside head, we will have something called title. Okay, same way inside body, we have something called a paragraph tag. Okay, and once it, this is what your tree structure looks. Okay, HTML has two things, one is head and one is body. Inside head, we have title. One side body, we'll have something called paragraph tag. So this is something called a DOM. Okay, your tree structure, your representation of your HTML document in a kind of a tree structure is nothing but a DOM. Okay, so this is how your document has been understood by your browser. Okay, so that's why it's been the colors and other things are available here. Okay, so then here I'll show you about the reusable. Okay, so what comes here is, why do we say React is reusable? Okay, so why do we say React is reusable is, so this is a GUI's website. Okay, so suppose this is a GUI website. Okay, everything here is a component. Okay, if I go to the courses here. Okay, so this is a courses. Okay, this is a courses page. Okay, everything here is a component. For example, here we have something called navigation bar here. If you click on the particular thing, it will go to the particular page. Okay, so we will name it as a navigation component. Okay, so this is, consider this is a navigation component. Okay, and this is something called header. Okay, so header component. Okay, same way here we are listing all the courses. Okay, so here recommended courses, programming, and every courses here. Okay, consider if you build a component. Okay, so for example, you are going to build a component that is going to list all the courses. Okay, for example, here this is something called recommended courses. Okay, and here inside that we have each and every courses that are specific to recommended courses. Same way for programming language, we have courses for C programming and C and other things. Same way for data science. If you look the design, okay, if you look after the design, both the designs are same. Okay, so there, what is the design here? There should be a title, there should be a view all button. Inside that we'll be having all the courses listed here. We need to have a scroll bar here. Okay, so this is a basic design. Okay, so you can build a component something like this. Okay, and reuse that component something like in recommended courses. You can use it in the programming languages, you can use it in the data science and everything other as well. Only the data is going to change inside that particular component. For example, here the title is recommended course. Okay, same way here it is programming language. Same with data inside the recommended courses, machine learning and AWS. Same with data inside your programming languages, C programming and C++ programming, other things. Okay, so that's what reusable does here. Okay, now you can create a component called courses. Okay, you can create a component called courses. So what is the courses? What are all the data that it need? Okay, the title. Okay, so it takes a title. Okay, and then there is a button over here. Inside that it has list of all the courses. Okay, so you can create a component something called courses. Okay, inside that we have something called course. Okay, each and every course has been listed here, right? So you can create one component called course, something like this, and reuse it here, reuse it here, reuse it here, reuse it here, here. Okay, so that's what you are going to build once. Okay, and use it in multiple places. Okay, so if you, for example, if you create a component called course, okay, for example, here this is a course, one particular course component. Okay, so what are the details that it need? Okay, something called it expects what is the type of the course, something like premium or essential, and it takes how many hours, it takes a language, students enroll, and the title. Okay, so you create a component that takes these as an input. Okay, so you can create a component in your React. Okay, it takes some input. What are the inputs? Title, hours, language, and student account. Okay, and what is the type of thing? Okay, so once you have this, okay, dynamically, you can use it here, 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 and some other ways. Okay, so that's something called reusable. Okay, so clear on this point? So clear on the reusable point here? So what I mean here, do you guys understand? Can everyone confirm? Okay, okay. So now, so this is a one kind of a feature of your React. Okay, so that's why you need to use React. Okay, the next thing is virtual DOM. Okay, so virtual DOM is the most powerful thing of your React. Okay, so here I told you the normal DOM, how it looks. It will transform into a something like tree structure, HTML. Inside HTML, we'll have head and we have body. Inside head, we'll have something called title and paragraph tag. Okay, same representation. I have a diagram here. Okay, see. So there is a concept I told you, right? So there is something called DOM. Okay, so this is something called a real DOM. Okay, so this is how your real DOM looks. So HTML, that's kind of a tree structure. See here, this is a real DOM. Consider this is an HTML tag. Inside HTML, we have head, or for example, this is head. Okay, this is body. Inside body, we might have something called paragraph tag, something like this, paragraph body tag. And here, if there may be another paragraph tag. Inside that, there may be it can have another tag. Okay, so consider this is a real DOM. This is how it looks in a real DOM. Okay, so then what differs between your React and other libraries or your normal JavaScript? Okay, so why do we need virtual DOM here? So that's the thing. For example, if you use the real DOM, for example, if you want to, here I have an ID. Okay, so something like ID equal to something like message. Okay, using this message, okay, what if I want to change the name or change the content inside it? What we need to do? We'll be using something called document.getElementById by ID of message dot inner HTML. We'll be changing this message. So this is what in JavaScript you have experienced it. Okay, so something like you need to write three statements, like first selecting that particular ID, document.getElementById by ID of message, then that particular ID dot inner HTML, and need to mention a certain message. Okay, so this is how you work. Okay, so consider that is the thing here. Okay, consider this is the paragraph tag. Okay, consider this is the paragraph tag over here. What your React does here is it will take a copy of your real DOM. Okay, so initially you will have a DOM here, right? So consider this is a real DOM now. Okay, so here this is the real time HTML that we basically use. Okay, it will take your DOM structure and have a copy of it in its memory. Okay, so React will take complete copy of your real DOM. Okay, in a kind of a lightweighted version. Okay, it will take a copy of your DOM in its memory, and that's something called virtual DOM. Okay, so that is something called virtual DOM. So you have already a DOM. For example, everything here is a DOM. Okay, here, and it will what it happens here is if you use React, it will take a copy of your real DOM and have it as a something called virtual DOM. Okay, in its memory. Okay, so React does it. Okay, so whenever there is a change happening, for example, if you want to change the content here, okay, hello GUI, okay, so you need not do here something like document.getElementById and certain things. Okay, so basically we won't do that. Okay, your React will identify certain things. It will there is something called states here. Okay, in your React we have something called state. Okay, so if you change that state, automatically it will be modified. You need not do certain you need not do sorry, it is closed. Okay, so you need not select that particular thing like document.getElementById and other things. Okay, your React does it for us. Okay, see here now, whenever a change happens, for example, if you want to change the data over here to hello GUI to hello world. Okay, this is how your React works. Okay, and this is why your React is so fast. Okay, the concept of virtual DOM. This is the React. Okay, so React symbol, this is the React's logo. Okay, what comes here is, suppose if you want to change the value of your message to here hello GUI to hello world. Okay, so what it comes here is your virtual DOM, right? It has a copy of your real DOM in its memory. That's what I told you, right? It will check if the previous version and the newest one you need to change. For example, This is the DOM that currently has. Okay, so this is the DOM that you are going to modify. For example, this is the p tag. Okay, consider this is a paragraph tag here. There is a paragraph tag here. Okay, HTML body paragraph tag. There is an HTML, and inside that there is something called body and head. Inside body we have paragraph tag. Okay, so consider here. This is here is the paragraph tag that we are going to modify here. Okay, consider it that consider in that way. Okay, here if you want to modify it, I told you, right, it will check for the difference. See here now, this is the normal DOM, virtual DOM. Okay, it will compare with the both the things. Okay, compare what is the thing that you're going to modify. For example, only this particular thing is modified, right? And what your React does is it will do those manipulations and changes to be done only in its virtual DOM. Okay, not the real DOM. So whenever you go to the DOM, okay, normal real DOM, okay, it's always costly. Okay, because consider there is like an HTML document with around 150 or 200 lines. Okay, you need to search for a tag with p of id, something called message. Okay, how much time does it take? It will take at least like 2 seconds. Okay, consider in that way. Okay, so instead of doing that, what it happens here is it will take a light version of your real DOM and have a version called virtual DOM in its memory. Okay, it will do the things only inside this particular virtual DOM only. Okay, not in the real DOM. For example, if you want to change the value of paragraph tag over here, it will compare the difference between the virtual DOM and the changes that you are going to modify, and find the difference between them. And it will find you that this is going to be modified. Okay, it will apply, then only it will apply the changes to your real DOM. Okay, other than that, everything is done in your virtual DOM only. It will not use your real DOM at all. Okay, so once the changes are being done, it will take a copy of your real DOM and have it in the virtual DOM again. And again, if you want to do some changes, it will easily identify with your virtual DOM. Compare everything with your virtual DOM. Okay, not with the real DOM. So that's why it's so fast. It is not going to work on your real DOM. Okay, so it will work only with the virtual DOM and find the difference. Apply the patch. So patch is nothing but the changes. Okay, so apply the changes only to that particular component, and other components are not affected at all. Okay, so other components need not load again and again. Okay, so that's the thing with your virtual DOM. Okay. Is it clear? So it won't be twice the size. Because it takes a part. No. Do change in the no. I think you misinterpreted it here. Okay, see here now. There is a real DOM here. Okay, so your normal HTML document. This is a normal document, right? Okay, so that's something called real DOM. Okay, so whenever you render your application, okay, your React takes a copy of your real DOM and have something called a virtual DOM in its memory. Okay, consider it is an object. Okay, so consider it will take a copy of it and store it as an object. Okay, so whenever there is a change happening, suppose if you want to change the value inside, consider this is a paragraph tag. Okay, suppose if you want to modify the changes, okay, how your React work here is it will compare the changes or search the things only in your virtual DOM. Okay, for example, you are going to use something called document.getElementById of message here, right? That particular selector is done in your virtual DOM only, not in your real DOM. Okay, you'll find those difference and selectors and everything is done in virtual DOM. Okay, and find where it should apply the changes. Okay, and then the changes will be directly modified in the real DOM. Okay, before that, the searching operations or selectors and everything is done in a virtual DOM. Once everything is done, it will give the patch or it will give the changes to your real DOM. Okay, that's why your real DOM is not affected at all. Everything is done in virtual DOM. Once everything is done, the last changes that it will modify the real DOM over here. Okay, so then once the real DOM is updated, it will take a new copy of virtual DOM again in its memory. Next time a new change comes again, it will check, it will compare with the virtual DOM what is the change to be modified and applying the changes only when it is needed. Okay, so that's the thing here. Clear on this? Can everyone confirm? Okay. Yeah. So this is a theory part. Okay, so you will understand how it works in when you go with the practical session. Okay, so I always feel the first class would be like very dry. Okay, because it's going to be theory only. So I'm going to show you PPT and other things only today. Okay, so that's why. Okay, you will come to understand very clearly when you go into the practical session. Okay, so that's not an issue at all. Don't worry on that. Okay, now you need to know some theoretical base for at least for interview preparations or before starting with the practical session. You can now you can easily know that how virtual DOM works, and then when we apply it as a practical thing, you can easily understand. So that's about your virtual DOM. Okay, so don't worry on that. Okay, so now the next topic is JSX. Okay, so here here it is something called a JSX. Okay, something called the full form of JSX is JavaScript XML. Okay, so that's the full form. So what comes here is you can see a weird syntax here. So what is the weird syntax here? So what is something different here in this particular syntax? Can anyone easily it's easily visible? So something like default some weird syntax. Exactly. So you can see JavaScript part here, const test equal to, okay, and HTML part here. Okay, something like a combination of your JS and HTML. Okay, so that is something called JavaScript. Okay, so what is a JSX here? Your HTML part and your JavaScript part, everything is combined to one particular form, and that is something called JavaScript XML. Okay, so your entire React application is, we are going to use JSX. So you might be seeing that. So we are in a function. For example, if you have a function inside that particular function, we'll be returning HTML elements. Okay, so those kind of weird syntax we'll be seeing in our practical session. Okay, so that's what the combination of your JavaScript. You will write your JavaScript things inside your HTML itself. Okay, so your HTML, there is nothing called .html files. Sorry, so there is nothing called .html files. Like for example, students detail, student list. So there won't be anything called student details.html or student list.html and other things. Okay, there will be something called student list.js, student form.js, and other things. Inside the JS itself, we'll be writing HTML, even the CSS, even the JavaScript part, everything is done inside your JSX itself, and that's something called JSX, so JavaScript XML. Okay, so basically HTML is a XML, right? So it's a XML structure, right? The same way. Okay, that's why it's called JavaScript XML. Okay, so that is something called JSX. So any is it clear? So we will see it in the practical. Okay, so that's not an issue at all. So when you start writing code in React, okay, you'll understand how JSX and your React works. Okay, so that's what we use JSX here. Okay. So what is the purpose of we use JSX? Okay, so JSX is nothing but that's okay. So you already worked with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, right? So you will come to know the purpose of it. Okay, when you use JSX. Okay, it will be very clear when you use JSX. Your React uses JSX. Okay, for example, inside students list, what you need to do, basically you need to just you just need to render the student list of all the user details, right? That's what your JavaScript function itself done will be doing. Okay, you can write a function called render students information. Okay, in that particular function, okay, you can do some mapping, like each and every, you are going to loop each and every students list, and you can return HTML elements from that particular map function instead of writing a particular mapping thing here. Okay, so if I go here, okay, so I'll write the JavaScript part here. Okay, so for example, I can have an array, for example. Okay, I have this array. Okay, so what I'll do is name. So this is an array of object. Okay, so it has something called name property inside that. Okay, so if I print test, okay, It is an array of 2 elements. It has something called name, Tamil, and name equal to Guru. Okay. So what we will be using basically, so we will be using something like, if you want to loop through things, okay. So test.map, okay. So what we will do, so each and every things will be coming here, and we'll be returning t.name, something like, you can return anything. So it will return something like this. Same way here, what we'll do is we will return HTML elements itself. For example, test.map, okay. The same t here, okay. And we will be returning HTML elements, something like paragraph tag here, okay. Something like this, and looping over the things, something like this. So we'll be having t.name here, okay. This is something called VS syntax. So there is something called curly braces here, okay. So this is how we use it in React. So instead of returning some certain elements here, we'll be returning HTML elements itself, okay. So both your HTML and your JavaScript is combined, okay. And that gives you the power of having everything in the same place, instead of having HTML in one part, CSS in one part, and JavaScript in one part, okay. See here, so you can have a function, something called render student, okay. You can just go over here, students.map, and return the each and every element with the paragraph tag, and you can apply even here, you can apply the class name here, okay. Everything can be done here. That's a combination. That's why we use Jsx in React, okay. And that is the main purpose of Jsx. Is one of the main purpose of using the React, okay. Everything is combined, okay. So easy to write and manage the code. Okay, clear on these 3 things. So these only for these these 3 things only React is more powerful, and we use React, okay. One is reusable, one is the purpose of the power of virtual DOM, okay. One is the JSX, okay. So that's the thing. So the other things are, as I mentioned, it's industry 10, okay. That's why it's an industry 10, and everyone is migrating to React.js, and obviously it's very easy to learn. So if you have a keen interest on React, and if you have a desire to become a front-end developer, so you can learn it in just like in 1 to 2 weeks, okay. So it's very easy to learn. So the last point is it is just a add-on. If you know React, okay, you can easily write React Native code. So that's the basic thing. Only thing is you need to use certain modules, okay. So other than that, everything is same, okay. So that's the thing. And yeah, so this is what I showed you in the GUI's website here, okay. So you have everything is component here, okay. So this is a menu bar component or navigation component. So this is something called your header component, okay. And you can see here, this is completely a courses component. Each and every course inside that, okay, is a course component. So what is the property that it takes? A title, yeah, student fees and enroll button and other things, ratings and other things. Only the data differs, okay. So you can write a component like courses and supply the data, it will render as expected. The same can be used here, same can be used here, and same can be used here, and everything, okay. That's why it's reusable. That's what I showed you as a screenshot over here, okay. So now we are done with why should we learn React, okay. So the first topic is done, and here the last thing is, so what should you know before learning React, okay. So that's this is the main thing, right, before starting anything, okay. So I hope these are being covered already, okay. For example, JavaScript basics. So you know JavaScript already, so you had a session already. What is an array, objects, and conditional and other things. Same way ES6 features, so classes, array destructuring, for each and other things. And for example, basic commands of npm, okay. So this is what I took you these 3 things in the last 2 classes, okay. So ES6 features, classes and arrays and concepts, and basic npm commands. So this is what your first 2 classes were, okay. So now if you are very strong with the basics of JavaScript, you can, like, it's a cup of tea for you in the case of a React part, okay. So now we are done. Async await not covered. Is it so? So is it not covered in the JavaScript class? Oh. Okay. I thought it's been covered already. Okay. Okay. That's not a big concept. I will show you. Okay. So have you guys learned promises, promise, callbacks, and other things? Okay. So can anyone answer how promise works? So what is the purpose of promise? So I will show you the difference of promise and async await. It's very easy. I'll show you. So can anyone answer what is a promise? So why do we need promise? Okay, obviously in order to avoid callback hell. Okay, so what is the purpose of a promise or a callback? So why do we need them? So that's my question. Okay, so that's the keyword that I want to understand. Async. Okay, so what is the async over here? So that's the thing here, right? For example, you are requesting some data to your server. Okay, so this is one sort of an example. Okay, so basically in your front end, okay, what you will do, you will be requesting some data from the server and have them displayed in your UI. So this is what your normal web application works. Okay, so here we have all the courses. Okay, so these courses details will be coming from your server, obviously. Okay, so that particular operation may take some time. Okay, so obviously this is obvious basic knowledge, right? So in order to request data from the server, it takes some time to process the data and that needs to be written. Okay, so that is something called the asynchronous kind of an operation. Okay, so we don't know the exact time. Okay, so we cannot, you cannot just like give something like a set timeout or other things. Okay, you need to use something called promise. Okay, so what is a promise over here? Okay, so okay, I will come with the callback first. Okay, so what is the callback first thing is? So you will be having a function. Okay, once it is done, okay, so you will be calling a callback function in return. Okay, once everything is done, you'll be calling the return function. Okay, that is a callback function. Okay, this is something like the callback. Same way in the case of promise. Okay, you have certain process that you mention in your promise. Okay, and then we have something called dot then and dot catch. Okay, so in the dot then, so what it means is, it means the operation is success. Okay, and we have something called resolve and reject. Okay, if the operation is success, you will be resolving it. Okay, if the operation is failure, like if it comes to the dot catch, okay, you will be rejecting it. Okay, that's the basic thing. So what happens here, until that particular promise is completed, your particular operation is on hold, and once it is completed, dot then will be called if it is completed successfully. Then if it is completed, not if it is failure, it will go to the dot catch. But anyway, the process is completed and it was waiting until the process is completed. So that's what your promise does. You have an asynchronous operation. Okay, you are fetching a data from the server. Okay, it needs some time to be consumed. Okay, so you need to wait until the next process to be done, until we get the data. So we are holding that particular process until it completed, using until it completes, using something called promise. Okay, once it is completed, so we will get a confirmation in particular thing called dot then and dot catch. Okay, if that particular process is success, we'll be getting into the data something called dot then. Okay, if that particular process is failure, it will come to the dot catch. Okay, so inside the dot then, if it is success, promise will give two things. One is resolve and reject. Okay, so inside resolve, once it is success, we will be resolving it. If it is if there is an error, we'll be using it as a reject. Okay, so what is the basic thing here? We have promise. Okay, we have something called dot then and dot catch. Okay, and here promise will have two things: resolve and reject. Okay, so once the then function everything is done, you will be resolving it. Okay, same way if if it is an error, we will be using something called reject over here. Okay, so this is something like your promise and asynchronous operation. Okay, async await is exactly doing the same purpose. Callback. So this is a hierarchy. Initially, there was something called callback. In order to overcome the callback hell or some problems over there, we came into the concept of promise. Okay. Then in the we have something called some logics here, right? So in the case of promise, even this is also being a stress for us. Okay. So promise, we need to have them resolved or reject. We have something called dot then and dot catch. In order to overcome these things, okay, we have something called async and await. Okay. So this is an hierarchy. So everything that's the same promise things. Okay, Only thing is async await, we have a different syntax. Okay, so let's see. So I will show you an example now. What I'll do is I'll take an example of promise. Okay, so promise example. So normal example, simple example I want to show you. Just give me a minute. Simple example. Okay, I will use this particular example now. Okay. Okay, so here, this is how you basically create a promise. Okay, so new promise. Okay, function, it will take something called resolve and reject. So they have something called my resolve and other things. Okay, I will have it as a resolve itself. You can have any name. I will have it in this way. So resolve and reject. Okay, simple. Here you have created a promise. Okay, so your promise part is done. Okay, you are going to use this promise. Okay, now. Okay, so that's what something called promise dot then over here. Okay, so promise dot then. Here promise dot then we'll have something called, if the code is successful, we have something we'll call this particular function. If it is error, we'll write some logics over here. Okay, so this is normally like a promise. Okay, the same thing can be done something like this. See here now, suppose you are going to fetch a data. Okay, fetch data. Okay, something like from server. Okay, I can have it in the, and you have some function over here. Okay, and you have some logics inside it. So logics for fetching data. Okay, so here it was, here only you are going to use that particular thing. Okay, so what is an async await here? Okay, here. Okay, so for example, if you write a logic something like fetching the server, okay, you can directly use something called await here. Okay, so await. Okay, so for example, you will be using fetch API, right? So I will use the fetch API here as well. Okay, fetch, and it will take some request info, something like this. Okay, some data, it is taking some data like URL and other things. Okay, so basically in the promise, what you will do, so something like fetch dot then and other things you will be doing. Okay, but in the case of async await, you can directly use await and fetch over here. Okay, whenever you use await, okay, you should use something called async here. Okay, so here inside your function, so for example, I will have it as a normal syntax. So this is a function here, normal function. Okay, whenever you use await here, you need to use a keyword called async before the particular function definition. Okay, so once you have done in this way, your fetch API will take some time, right? So that's obvious, right? So when you use async and await, it will wait until that particular process is done. That's the thing here. If it is successful, that particular data will be available here. You can directly assign that particular value here. The fetch call is successful, that particular data will be available inside here. Okay, inside here. So what I'll do is I'll take the example here. So fetch API. I'll show this example now. Okay, so the same example. This has been introduced using promise. Okay, the same thing can be done in this way. Okay, so this is the thing. So I will have the same here function. Okay, so this is using promise. This is going to use async and await. Okay, so it will be easy for me to compare the things. Okay, so see here now. Here, okay, I will use the same URL to get the data. Okay, so URL. Okay, simple. Okay, here what you will do, I will have the same variable name response here. Okay, I'll have it here because you know the promise first. Okay, so promise. So for example, this is a very simple example, and I hope you will understand this. Okay, let's see. Using promises, if you make something called a fetch API, what you will basically do, You will write a function, something like this. Consider there is a function. In that function, you will be returning something called fetch. It will do some fetch APIs and return some elements here. Okay. So basically, when you call fetch data, it will return some data. Okay. So fetch data, I will have the same thing. Okay, I can show you in the browser. Okay, what I will do is here now. So fetch data, there's a function. It takes a fetch API and has something called dot then and other things. Okay, so I'm going to return this simple thing. Okay, fetch data is a function that is going to fetch some data from this particular example. So example.com/movie.json. Okay, I will open it here. Maybe there may be some data. I'm not sure. Okay, so consider there is a data coming from here. Okay, and once it is successful, what will happen in the promise? It will call dot then. Okay, and inside the dot then we'll be getting something called response. Okay, we will be basically using response.json. Very simple. Okay, very simple. They're using again the data here. Okay, so what it means is once this particular then is resolved, we can have this particular then. Okay, what I lose, I will have a catch here. Okay, so understand the error. Okay, so error and console.log of that particular error. Okay, so that's the thing here. Okay, so if there is if it is successful, I will be getting response and I can use something called response.json. If it is error, I'll be getting in the dot catch and then just consoling them here. Okay, before moving on to the async await, this is clear, right? Hope it should be clear. So this is clear, right? So this is basic promise that you learned already before starting with your async await. Can everyone confirm? If I get confirmation only for only one, then only I can make you understand async await. That's why I'm asking. Okay. So now the same functionality can be done in the case of async await. Okay. So that's the thing here. Okay. Same fetch API. Okay. Same fetch API. It is going to take some URL. So it is taking some URL. Okay. Only thing is there is nothing a concept called dot then or dot catch and other things. Okay. Directly when you use await, okay, await is nothing but as the word itself will give you a meaning. Okay, it will wait until this particular process is done. Okay, so it will wait until this. Once if it is successful, it will give you the response, something like this here. So dot then, right? If it is successful, you will be getting response here. Okay, and you can directly get the something like this response.json. They can call directly something like this or console them. Okay, simple. Okay, that's the syntax here. Okay, very simple. Okay, only thing is when you use await here, you can use something called async here. Okay, you can use async. You need to use async if you want to use await. Okay, that's the thing. Okay, suppose if you want to handle multiple things, for example here, so consider in this way. Okay, you need to make an API call here, you need to make one more API call here, you need to make one more API call here. Okay, consider this is a scenario for you. Okay, so in the case of for example, you got a situation. Once this is done, this should be called. Okay, once this is done, this should be called. So where would you write this logics? Inside your dot then, right? So once the dot then is completed, you need to call this. Okay, inside particular dot then, you need to have it in this way. For example, okay, something like this. Okay, once this is completed, okay, for example, once this is completed, I need to call this particular function over here. Okay, so consider in that way. Same way, once this particular response is completed, okay, I need to call this particular API. Okay, so this is the scenario. Okay, this is how it works now. Okay, so this is movies, and this can become something like actors and cast. Okay, something like this. Okay, here this is what you basically use. Okay, or you can have dot then and other things after dot then, after dot then you can do it in this way also. Okay, something like this. Okay, this is one way. So this leads to something called callback here. Okay, see, even the promise you can make a callback here. Okay, same way if you don't want to use this. Okay, so normally what you will write here. So once it is done, okay, in the next then you can write those logics. So here dot then, so dot then you can write these logics. So once it is completed, you can do it. You can do these logics over here. Okay, same way once this is done, you can have one more then here. Okay, so this is what that you use when you use something called a promise. Okay, so this syntax also, this particular syntax also is a bit painful for you. Okay, so you need to write one dot, then here after that you need to write one more thing and other things here, right? So in order to overcome this, we have something called async await. Okay, see, logic is very simple. Okay, for example, this is movies, right? I can have something called movies response here. Okay, I can have any name. Okay, same way, if you want to do the next thing, call here. Okay, see, movies response, and this is going to be something called actor response. Okay, and this is something called something like cast response. Okay, just 3 lines. Okay, here these movies, something like actor, this is cast. Okay, you need to, if you use promise, you need to write this much logics over here. Okay, but in the case of when you use async await, okay, just give async await. Okay, once this is completed, this will be the response. Once this is completed, here it will be the response. Once this is completed, here is the response. Now you can ask me a question, where is the error part here? Okay, so that's where we use something called try. Okay, so try everything over here. Okay, simple, try everything over here. If there is an error in at least any of the thing, okay, console.log of error. Simple. See, simple. Okay, so you want to try these things. Okay, once everything is done, okay, if there is a console.log, so if there is an error happening in any of these things, call this particular error function. Simple. Okay, so see the simplicity. So you need to use in this way in order to access, like once movie is done, then you need to call movies actors over here. Once actors is complete, you need to call cast here. Okay, instead of giving like dot then dot then dot then dot then. Okay, this is the latest syntax in ES6. Okay, so ES6 has something called async. Whenever you put a async function, async before a function, then only you can use await. Okay, if you don't use it, it will throw you an error. Okay, so you need to use async over here. So whenever you want to use await, okay, you can use an async here and just call them directly. Okay, call await here, that particular response will be available here. Same way here, if any errors throwing here, okay, it will call the cat function. Okay, very simple. So this is all about your async await. Okay, clear on this? Can everyone confirm? So whatever the thing, so whatever the language that you go, there may be upgradations coming. Okay, so that's why usually people say if you're in IT, you need to keep yourself updated. So that's the thing here. It depends on every languages. Okay, so not specific to JavaScript, it applies to everything. So you need to be getting updated. For example, next year, so there may be a new versions being introduced in your JavaScript. Okay, so we may not know. So we need to be very keen on the updates. Okay, so then only you can sustain in the industry. Okay, so please follow the documentation. So you will get to know in once you learn these things. Okay, so it will take some time. Once it is once you are clear, okay, so you know how JavaScript works. And so this is an hierarchy. For example, initially there was callback, then we come to promises. Now we are in the we are in the phase of async await. The later point of time, okay, even this is also will be a little painful for us to type. There may be any other features that will be coming. Okay, yeah, we can say it in that way. So advanced way of promises, nothing but async await. Yes. Isn't a fetch already async function? Then why we use async here? We are not mentioning fetch here, async here, right? So we are making our fetch data function to act as async, not the fetch. Yeah, closures are basic JavaScript. I'm not going to cover anything. So I'm just covering the things that are very specific to your React. If I start JavaScript, JavaScript is C. It goes on. It can go like you can learn JavaScript like for 1 year. So there are many concepts in JavaScript. But as in order to start as a beginner, so this is very feasible. Okay, so you need to know what is basic variables and other things. Okay, so once you are done with these, with this basic, you can easily learn other things. So only thing is you need to very clear on the concept, some basic concept, then you can learn multiple things in your that comes into your plate. Yeah. So if the second function in fetch data has an error, will third function run? No. So it will stop here. Okay, it will come to the error here. For example, if this particular function is success, if this fails, okay, this won't be running. Okay, this will be coming here to the error. Okay, so that's the thing that we need, right? So we need to stop other process to be done if there is an error. If you want to add error message for particular fetch, then how can we do it with await? Message for particular fetch. For example, only for this. Okay, so you cannot do it in that way. So even in the promises, okay. So for example, use fetch here. Okay, in dot, then you will be using one another fetch. Okay, suppose if you basically once in the dot, then you will be calling that particular function here actually. Okay, so there will be only one catch here for entire fetch data. Okay, same applies here. Okay, there will be only one thing here. Okay, we cannot have multiple things. we cannot have specifically for this particular message. So what you need to do is you need to separate these things. Okay, so then you need to have one more try. Okay, here one more try and get the error message for that particular data. Same way you need to have one more try and use that fetch for multiple another response. Okay, but basically in the live response or live application, we'll be using one try. If there is an error, we will be throwing them like internal server error and finish off the details. So if you want to have a message for specific response, so you need to have each and every try catch for each and everything. So we basically don't do that. Yeah. So clear on this, clear on the async await part. So we diverted from the topic. So is it clear? So async await is clear. Okay. Thanks for confirming. Okay. So now, so sorry, we diverted from there. Now we just move to the React part. Okay, so now we are done with the introduction to React. Okay, so what is React and why should you learn React and what should you learn before learning React? Okay, that's what we saw so far. Okay, so we have something called React fundamentals. So this is the basic thing. So what I'll do is I'll quickly go over the things. Okay, here I told you components. Okay, so what are the components here? So basically I told you here, right? So what is a component? Separating each and every logic. For example, we can create a component called course and using it in multiple places. So that's something called component. So component is nothing but a separate piece of code. Okay, something like a different module. Okay, so it's a separate module, and once you need, whenever you need, you can import it in multiple places. For example, you can import course here, and here. Okay, and you can have something called menu bar component here. Okay, so you can export them and import it in multiple places. Okay, and that's what a component in your React. Okay, but there are two types of component. Okay, one is class component, one is functional component. Okay, for now you just understand the theory part alone. Okay, so before moving on to explain you about the difference between the class component and the functional component, okay, so you need to know two things. One is state and one is properties. Okay, I already told you what is the property. Okay, for example, this is a course component. You have created a component here. Okay, so what are all the properties that it need? Can anyone answer? I already explained just now. So you have created a component, something called course. Okay, so this particular course component needs some properties so that it will work as expected. So what are the properties it has? Any guesses? I told the answer already. Exactly. Title, rating, button, description. Yes. Exactly. So that is something called properties. Okay, if you use a component, okay, you have something called component. Okay, it expects some properties to be sent. For example, this is a course component. Okay, and what are the properties that it need? something called title, English, language, and the rating and everything. This is something that only the data is going to change, but the logic is same. Okay, so that is something called props. Okay, so we basically use it. We say it as a props, but the full form is properties. Okay, so same way. So there may be some variables inside your component. Okay, here the same component I'm going to explain here. Okay, same here we have something called for example images and the buttons and other things. Okay, these are all something called state. So states are nothing but both state and properties are something called a basic JavaScript object. So something like this. Okay, so you know what is the JavaScript object, right? Something like, so this is basic JavaScript object here. That's what we spent already time on that. Okay, so consider state is a JavaScript object. Okay, it holds some data inside it. Okay, same way properties, something called props, we mention it as props. It is again a JavaScript object. Okay, so it is again a pure JavaScript object, and we are going to use it in our component. Okay, so properties are nothing but in our case, okay, for example, this what are the properties that you need to send to your course component? Something like age and the title and the rating and other things. Okay, states are nothing but again it's a JavaScript object that is very specific to your course component alone. Okay, it is very specific to that particular component. For example, here see here now. So this is the difference between your state and props. Okay, so props are nothing but that are passed from your parent to your child, and that is only read only. Okay, for example, you have an index component. Okay, it is consider it as a component. You have something called course component here. Okay, so course. So what all you are going to use your course component inside your index component. Okay, so this is called course component. So what are all the details or what are the properties that you need to send from your index component? So properties. So nothing but the what are the things here? Sorry. So title, rating, other things. Okay, so if you want to use, so this is something called an index component. Okay, so this is something called the index component. Okay, inside index component, okay, you are going to use a component called course component. Okay, so course component. Okay, so what it means is in my index component, or I can have something called courses. Okay, so if it is confusing for you, okay, there is something called courses component. What it do is it will list all the courses, each and every course. Okay, here. Okay, so first course, second course, and other things. Okay, the same example over here. I'll show the example here. Okay, so here recommended courses. Okay, this is the title. Okay, this is something called a courses component. Okay, it takes a title and takes a list of all the courses, and inside my courses component I use course, one course, second course, third course, and fourth course. So this particular course is nothing but this particular course component. Okay, same way this particular course is nothing but this particular component. Okay, so what are the properties that it need? So let's take the same example. Okay, course components. Okay, what are all the properties? What are the properties that it take here? Title. Okay, so title of the courses. Okay, so what are this is something with the example of recommended courses. I will have the example in the bracket. Okay, so these are all the properties that you need to send. Then what you need to send? You need to send list of all the courses. Okay, list of all courses inside that particular courses component. Okay, so your courses component is nothing but it takes properties like title of the course and list of all the courses. Okay, so what we do, what should return? So can anyone answer? So what it should return? It should return list of all the courses. Okay, so list of all the courses here. So here, instead of listing all the courses like each and every logics over here, I can create a component for each and every course. Okay, so course component. Okay, what does the course component take as a property? Title of the course. I will take two examples. Okay, title of the course rating students count. Okay, so consider in this way. Okay, I have created two component. One is courses component. Okay, this particular courses component needs what it expected, the title and the list of courses. Okay, so title of the course. In my case, I have an example called recommended courses. Okay, and list of all the courses. Okay, so what are all the courses inside the recommended courses? Something like I can, it's an array of object, right? Something like this. Okay, so array. So for an example, I can have it in this way. So it takes an array and has array of objects. So what is the, not all the name? So our name is something like AWS. Same way, I can have one more object called name equal to something called machine learning. I can have ML. Okay, this is a property that it need to work. Okay, if you create a courses component, okay, it needs title and the list of all the courses. Okay, in the case I can send recommended courses here, the title and the corresponding course details. What are the course name is equal to AWS and ML. Okay, and you can have the rating here. Okay, rating something called 5. Here you can have one more property, students count. Okay, so count equal to 2. Okay, I can have it in this way. Okay, or 2k, I can have anything. Okay, same way this particular course, what are all the properties? Again, rating is 4 and count is going to be something like 3, something like this. Okay, I can have this. Okay, so this is a basic thing. Your course component expects two things as a property: title of the course. Okay, all the title of the course. Okay, and list of all the course that are specific with your recommended course. Once you have created this component, what you can do? You can use it in the programming languages. So same way, if you go into the programming language section, you can have your programming language courses here, and the particular courses details can be used here. Same way for data science, same way for web development and database and okay. So once you create a component that takes two properties, one is your title, one is a list of all the courses, this particular UI is ready. Okay, see here now, what is the UI it has? It is going to list all the courses. Okay, so you create a component called courses. In the name called courses, it takes a property called title and list of all the course. So list of all the course. So you can place the same component here. You can use the same component here. You can use the same component here. You can use the same component here. Only thing is you need to change the properties. Okay, for example, if you want to display this particular course, you need to send a property called recommended course and that particular course details. So on that particular list of course. Same way, if you want to display this particular course, you need to pass a title called programming languages here. Okay, and list of all the courses that are specific to programming. Same way for data science. Okay, so create once and use it in multiple places. The same concept. Recommended courses, programming language, you can use it multiple places. And now inside each and every courses, okay, we have multiple course component. Okay, so what you can do, you can create a course component. Okay, what it takes: title of the course and hours and how many take and rating. Okay, so here you have the list of all the course right here, right? You can pass each and every data to this course component, and you can pass this data to the course component, display all the details over here. Same can be done here. So basically what it means is, for example, I have list of all the courses, something in the variable of all courses. Okay, something like this, all courses, consider it in this way. So I can do a map function here. Okay, so all courses dot map. Okay, and I will be getting each and every course inside this, right? I can return course component here. So I can return course component, each and every course component and the corresponding details. So what are all the properties: title of the course and rating and count. Okay, so you can create a one component called course here. Okay, something like this. Okay, inside. Okay, so I have created a course component. It takes something called title of the course and rating here, everything here. Inside my courses, I have list of all the course. So I can do a map function, return course component, each and every course component here, so that this one you can create once a course component, you can use it in multiple places, here, 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 and here. Okay, clear on this? Clear on the properties? Do I need to explain it again? Is it clear, or I need to explain again? Can everyone confirm? Okay, I will repeat once. Okay, so okay, so in order to develop this UI, okay, so what are all the things that you need? One is something called, okay, see the UI. Okay, so this is one section, this is one section, this is one section, and this is one section, and the corresponding things as well. Okay, so what are the section? Something called courses section. Okay, so this particular section, what are all the details that it need? One is the title of the section. Okay, so I can have something called title of the section here. Okay, if it is confusing for you. Okay, example. So what is the example? Recommended courses. It can be programming language, it can be anything. Okay, so programming language. So this is one sort of an example. Okay, then what are all the details that you need to render this particular section? The students, I mean the courses detail. Okay, each and every course, machine learning, AWS, and everything should come under recommended courses. Okay, they call machine learning and AWS and list of all the courses. Okay, so that's what I have. Need the list of all the courses. Okay, so what about now? So my voice is clear, at least now. Okay, okay, sorry about that. Okay, so component. Okay, this is something called courses component. The courses component has two things. One is recommended courses and the list of all the courses, the title. Okay, so title of the section. Just give a minute, give a minute. Is it clear now? So hopefully it should be clear now. Okay, okay. Sorry about that, guys. So I got some network issue. So I'm in my native. Okay. So now, yeah. So each and every section, I'm considering it as a courses component. Okay, consider this as a component. This is something called recommended courses component. This is going to be programming languages component. Okay. So here, everything is same, right? So UI is same. There is no change at all. Okay, so I can create a separate component called courses component, and that takes two things as input. One is your title and the list of all the course. So title of the section and list of all the course. Okay, so far clear, right? So clear on the courses component before moving on to the next component. Okay, so each and every courses, okay, what happens here? They have created a something called a card here. Okay, inside that we can create a component for this also, right? Instead of having them displayed here, and you can use that particular component here as well. Okay, so that's why I created one more component called course component. Okay, what it takes, again, title, something called rating on students count and other things. Okay, so what I'll do is, what comes here, you have a courses component. It takes multiple course component. That's the thing here, right? You have a courses component that is going to display all the courses that are specific to that particular recommended courses section. Okay, inside that particular recommended course section, I have created a component called course component to render this. Okay, so this is a course component, this course component, course component, course component. Okay, so your courses component is going to render multiple course component. Okay, so that's what I have done here. So my courses component takes two things as input: title of that particular section, list of all the courses in that particular section. Same way, each and every course component takes three things as input. For example, title of the course, rating, and students count. Okay, your course component, what it renders, it is going to render multiple course component. Okay, this is a component, right? So that's what I have done here. I have list of all the courses in an array called all courses. I can do a map, okay, and return each and I'm going to return each and every details here, right? The first object will be coming here and return the course component over here. So multiple course component is going to return again and again in here inside your courses component. So that's all about the reusable part here. Okay, see, your courses component is rendering multiple course component. Okay, and you use that courses component in multiple places here, okay, and each courses component is using a course component inside it. See, multiple course component. Okay, now is it clear? So clear on the properties. So I have explained two things: courses and course. Basically, your courses is going to render multiple course component. So that's what I have just shown you an example. All courses dot map, each and every course is rendered using course component. Okay, so you can create. So this particular UI is very simple. Okay, you can just create two things: courses component and course component, and your application is done. Okay, clear? Can everyone confirm? So you need to understand this particular concept. So then only you can know how your component works. Okay, so that's not an issue at all. When you come to the practical session, you will get to know them easily. Hopefully now you can understand. Yeah. So these are something called a properties. Okay, so when you use it in the any other files. Okay, states is nothing but consider it as a JavaScript object that is very specific to your courses component. Okay, so that particular state will not be available in your course component. For example, course is nothing but a variable. Okay, it's an object. Okay, something like this. So state. So here state. Okay, so I'm communicating my courses component. Inside my communication, I use course component. Okay, so each and every courses is going to display my course component over here. Okay, suppose it has some states here. Okay, state is nothing but a property, right? So it's something called a JavaScript object. Okay, that particular state is only available inside the course component. Same way, this particular state is available only inside the courses component. You cannot access states outside of that particular component. So that is what we mentioned here. Here, state is an object that holds a particular component's data and control its behavior. Okay, and here properties, objects that are passed from the parent from the child. So what is the parent component here? Course component is the parent component here, right? So in the courses component, you use something called each and every courses here. Okay, and you are passing some properties. Okay, so you are passing some properties over here. That's something called parent to child relationship here. Okay, but in the state, okay, that is only specific to that particular component alone. You cannot pass the data to any other components. Okay, simple. And your properties are so for now, as a theory, you can consider it in this way. Okay, so they are only for they are read only, but in the case of state, they can be updated. That's the thing. Okay, so then I told you there are two types of component. Okay, so I am sure this is very dry. Okay, this is theoretical. Okay, bear with me, we don't have any options. Okay, so we need to know the theory first, and then only can drill down with the practical. Okay, so you need to know certain keywords, something called what is a state and what is a props and what is a component and other things. Okay, so now we can see the components now. Okay, so there are two types of component: class and functional. Okay, so class component, I yesterday explained you about classes and inheritance concept, right? That is the purpose of your class component here. Okay, so it makes use of ES6 class and extends the component class in React. Okay, so what is the extends? Yesterday I explained you what is an extends. Exactly, inheritance. Okay, what it means is whenever you create a class component, you need to inherit a class from your React library. Okay, so there is a class called component in your React library. You need to inherit them. Okay, so basically, for example, if you create a class called course, class course extends component. Okay, so component is nothing but a class that is going to be imported from your React component. Okay, so that's how your class component will be created. Okay, so basically how the syntax would be is, so you'll be importing basic thing here. Okay, so JavaScript. So import, so it is named export, right? Named export that has been given by your React library. Okay, so component. Okay, so component from, so which is the library that you are going to use? So React. Okay, so this is the basic syntax. Okay, so whenever you create a component, what you need to do here is class, and you can mention a component name. So what is the component name? I can use something called courses. Okay, so courses. You need to extend that particular class. So extends. So yesterday I told you the inheritance, right? Extends the component here. Okay, so this particular component is again a class. That's why you are able to extend them. Okay, simple. Okay, so this is the syntax. So we need to export them so that the course component can be used in anywhere, right? So basic thing is export default courses. Okay, so you have given the courses here, right? So this is the basic syntax of your React application. Okay, so this is the basic syntax of your class component. Okay, so you need to import a class from your React library called component. Okay, and there is one more thing called React. Okay, here. So default export. So you need to have this. We will not be using the React here anyway. Okay, but you need to import them in each and every component that you use. Okay, so that's a syntax. Okay, see here now. So React is a library that is going to give multiple things. One is your default export. So it has some default export in its library, and we are importing them in the name of React. Okay, so if you know the morning concept, default export and named export, now you can understand. Okay, so this is default export, and we are just importing them here. Okay, and it gives some named export as well. So what are the named exporters? One of them is component. Okay, so this is a class that has been given by your React library. Okay, so whenever you create a class in your React, or whenever you create a component, okay, you need to create the component something like, if it is a class component, okay, I told you there are two types of components, class and functional. Okay, so class courses, this is your name. Okay, you can have any name here, your component's name extends that particular class from your React. Okay, simple. Okay, inside that we'll be writing some logics. Okay, something like constructor and other things. We will see it in action. Next, we need to export them, right? So that the courses component can be used anywhere in your React. Okay, so this is very basic syntax of your class component. Okay, clear? So this is why I explained what is classes, what is inheritance, what is default export, what is named export, and what is default export and named export, and how to import them. Okay, so now you can understand, or you are able to grab why I told you the basics are needed. Clear on how to create a component. So this is just a theory. We will see it in action tomorrow. Can everyone confirm? Yeah. Alrighty. Okay, so now I told you, so see here, makes use of your ES6 class. So ES6 class, ES6 only have the class functionality, right? And extends the component class in React. So this is the component class in React. It is going to extend here. Okay, so that's the first one. Okay, then what is a functional component? Okay, functional component are basically a basic JavaScript function. Simple. Okay, so nothing other than that. It's just a, so if the same thing, okay, the same thing, if you want to use as a functional component, okay, you need to use something called function courses. Just have a function and you can return some things here. Simple. Okay, so that's the thing here. So this is something called a functional component. There is nothing called a class component, or you need to export something like this. Nothing. Okay, just a normal JavaScript function, just return some HTML element inside it. Okay, simple as that. So that's something called a functional component. Okay, clear? So clear on the first point? Hopefully it should be clear. Yeah.
Yeah, one doubt. Like, can you show the code?
Okay.
At the line number 1, you had added a React component.
Okay.
React is an library.
Okay.
But why why React is called as an framework? Because we are using as a library.
No. I told you it's a React. React is a library as per the definition. See, React is a JavaScript library. It's
React is
sometimes
yeah.
sometimes it is called as a framework because it acts in that way. Okay, so in order to explain that, so I need to explain how Angular works. Okay, so some frameworks, what it does, I told you, right, there are set of rules you need to follow in
Yeah.
order to have a framework. Okay, for example, so what is the framework here for it? What is the rule here?
So here I have to I have to extend the component. That is the first rule.
Exactly. So this is the first rule, right? So
Yeah.
sometimes the behavior, some behaviors will look like it as a React, it as a framework, okay? But the actual definition is it is a JavaScript library. Here, even if you don't use it in this way, you can still use the React using function here, right? See here, there is no logic at all. It is just a normal function. You need to return some element here, okay? So there is no rule here, right? This is
Yeah.
again same JavaScript. I mean same React. Okay. Again, it is working as a normal JavaScript. You need not have you need to extend that particular component or other things. Okay. So you can create a function and it returns some HTML elements inside that. Okay. So
Okay.
that's why. So it's sometimes called as a framework. Okay. You need to follow certain rules, but it is not. It's actually a JavaScript library. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's all about the first point. Okay. So now, so for now, I'll return AP text. Okay, so hello, simple. Hello, I will have some sample here. Okay. So sample component, so component.json, something like this. Okay. So this is functional component and this is class component. Okay. I'll show the both the things. Anyways, whatever the component it is, you need to export them. Simple as that. It can be functional or it can be class. Okay. So this is the first thing. Now, what is the second thing? Called as stateful component, as they intend then to logic have implement logic called state. Okay, so basically this is consider this as a theory. Okay, so your course component will have something called states. Okay, so state. Okay, here state. See react.component, it shows you state here, right? So it has some state here. Okay, it can be initialized with some sample data over here. Okay, but in the case of functional component, there is nothing called state. Okay, so that's the thing. For now, you understand. You take the theory alone. Okay, so there is a variable called state in your course component. Okay, you can use them. You can call them using this dot state whenever you want to access that particular data in your functions. Okay, but in the case of functional component, there is nothing called state variable. Okay, so that's the thing. Because it use state, it is sometimes called as stateful component. Same way, functional component does not have does not have state, and that's why it's called stateless. Okay, so this is the basic thing. For now, you just understand this. Class component have state, functional component doesn't have state. Okay, states are nothing but it is a basic JavaScript object that holds the components data. For example, this is a courses component, right? It has some data inside it for in order to access them. Okay, so that it can have some state here. Okay, that's the thing. Let it be here. I'm going to second here. Okay, so there should be a render method that is a must one. Okay, if you don't use that, it will throw you an error. Okay, same way in the functional component, it should have a return statement. Okay, so if you have a courses, I will explain you with the both example. We have a courses component here. Okay, if you don't return anything here in your react component, it will throw you an error. At least there is one element should be returned. Okay, so you need to use something called a return statement inside your course component. Okay, so that is something that you need to know. Okay, in the case of class component, you need to use something called render. Okay, there should be a method called render by default. Okay, you should use this particular name only, render. Okay, inside that you can return anything, something like this. The same, I can have the same copied here. Okay, simple. Okay, so what is the logic here? So this is something called functional component, and this is something called your class component. So this is the syntax of it. Okay, so What are all the some rules that you need to follow? In the case of function component, you need to return at least there should be a return statement. Okay, so see here, there should be a return statement. If you don't have this, it will throw you an error. Okay, same way in the case of class component, you need to have a render function. So render method. Okay, so you need to have a method called render. Yesterday we saw right something called get name. Here it is JS class. See, we have something called constructor and get name and other things, right? So this is an optional. Okay, you can have get name or you may not. But in the case of React, you need to have a function named render by default, and it should return some HTML elements inside it. Okay, so that's the thing you need to know. Okay, whenever you use a course component, you need to use something called render function, and it returns some HTML element. Okay, in the case of functional component, there should be a return statement by default. So that's the rule. Okay, so then class component uses something called lifecycle methods. For example, render method is a lifecycle method. Okay, lifecycle methods are nothing but your React mentions certain methods that you can use it in later point of time. Okay, that's something called lifecycle methods. Okay, so those are all something like very inbuilt methods that are given by your components. Okay, so how it works is you have extended some class, extend your React class, right? So component. Okay, that particular component class will have some method. Okay, some methods inside it. For example, here I have person. Okay, consider this as a React component class. Okay, so class person, consider it as a React component class, and class mentor, we have something like this, right? Consider this is your class. Okay, so you are extending a class from your React class. Okay, component class. Okay, mentor. Okay, so now your class can able to access get name, right? So that's what we saw yesterday. So we are able to access the get name here, right? Same way, your component class has certain methods, some lifecycle methods. One of them is render. Okay, and we have some other things like component did update and other things. Okay, so etc. We have some methods over here. Okay, those methods are available for you. That's something called lifecycle methods. Okay, that is available only in your class component. Same way in the function component, there are no lifecycle methods. Why there is no function lifecycle methods? Lifecycle methods are nothing but only for your classes, right? So JavaScript classes only will have methods. Okay, so that's why there is no methods in your functional component. So consider functional component is a basic JavaScript function. Okay, it is going to return some element. There is no concept called state, and there is no concept called lifecycle methods and other things. Okay, clear on this? So clear on these points. Do you have any doubts on these concepts? Okay. So that's it for today. So this is something very basic with your React fundamentals. Okay, so there is something called lifecycle methods. I told you, right? So your components class will have some inbuilt methods like render and component did update, and that is the diagram that I want to show you here. Okay, so mounting, updating, and unmounting. Okay, so constructor, I told you, right? Constructor, render function. So these are some methods that have been given by your React itself. So you have extended the components class, right? This particular components class has some methods inside it. Okay, and that methods are this constructor, get direct sheet, and other things. Okay, we will see it in action in later point of time. But for now, you need to know that state component uses lifecycle, or the class component uses the lifecycle methods, and there should be a render method by default. Okay, same way your function components will have is the basic JavaScript function. Okay, it returns some HTML elements. Same way in the render function, it should return some HTML elements. Okay, your core class components have some lifecycle methods, something called render and component update, and we have one another, but like 5 to 6 things. Okay, so they are accessible. Same way in the functional component, we don't have anything. Okay, it is just a basic JavaScript function, and this is just basically a JavaScript class. Okay, clear? That's the thing. Okay, so what are the properties that you send that will be available here as a something called props? Okay, so we will see it in the practical session. Okay, for now, for the theory, you need to know these things. Okay, clear? Okay, state only I don't understand. State's nothing but it's a basic JavaScript array here. Okay, so if you don't know what is state, here, what are the properties of your person class or what are the properties of your mentor class? Batch, right? Here, batch. So this particular batch is nothing but a variable that is specific to your mentor class. Same way, states are nothing but it's again a variable or a JavaScript object that is very specific to that particular component amount. Okay. So if it is confusing here, okay, I can have the constructor here. See here, constructor. Okay, and I need to call the super constructor right before moving on to the top, because it should call the components for constructor first, and then only we need to have. So we can have something called this.state here. It's just a JavaScript object. This is the basic syntax of it. Okay. So if you don't understand what is state, so state is nothing but a JavaScript object. Okay, basic JavaScript object. Okay, that is it holds some data inside that. Okay, so whenever there is a state, if you want to store some data, you can store it in this way. Okay, you can store it in this particular data. Okay, you can have other properties as well, but we basically follow something called state. Okay, so inside the state we'll hold all the components data. Okay, simple as that. Okay, if you don't understand what is state, this is what the representation of state. We already see what is batch and what is age and name, right? The same kind of a property, we have something called state. Okay, yeah. So this is the state that's been given in your components class itself. Okay, even if you don't mention it in this way, okay, there will be a state inside your component and that is accessible, something similar to this. Okay, so here you have something called mentor. Okay, but you are able to access the get name. You are able to access name and age, right? Same way, there is a state, there is a variable called state inside the components class. Okay, you are able to access that state inside your component as well. Okay, so you can use it as a data storage. Inside that you can store any names or any other things you want to have. Okay, that particular data will be available inside every functions, like render function and what are the function that you write, you can directly call something called this.state. Okay, clear on this? Now is it clear on the state part? Can everyone confirm if you don't understand? Yeah. Alrighty. Okay. Yeah, thank you guys. And that's it for the theory. So I will share you this PPT. Maybe it might be useful for you. And then what else I need to share you? Here, okay, you cannot use these things. So for now, we will have the practice exercise tomorrow. Okay, here it is. Yeah, I have shared you the things. Okay, here, I'll copy these things. So this is the feedback form. And okay, please go over that particular PPT. So I will share you that again here. Documents. Okay, I have shared you the PPT as well. Okay, please go over the things. Okay, you don't need to mug what is happening there. Okay, basic thing is, so the React, so even now sorry. Okay, is it clear now? Okay, so now you are able to understand what is the basics of React. Okay, so whenever React comes in place, so what do you guys need to know? Components. Yeah, it's uploading. Wait for them. Okay, so PPT is uploading. So when now if I ask you a question, so what is a React? What do you basically do? So React is a JavaScript library. So that's what you say. So it's going to we will be using it as a library for developing UI. Okay, so what are the things, some fundamentals of your React? So what are the fundamentals? Basic thing is state, props, components, virtual DOM, Jsx. So you need to just your interview questions are only out of these particular five topics. Okay, so you will be having like, they will be asking like, what is the difference between class and functional, what is the life cycle methods and other things. Okay, So you just know it as a basic thing now. Okay, just have it as a theory. When you start developing the application, you will be easily understanding the things that are inside the React. Okay, so that's why it's very simple to learn. So the concept is very minimal. Okay, only the components, states, props, lifecycle methods. That's it. Okay, so not there is nothing like many other things. Okay, so I have the documentation. So I have the React.js documentation here. Okay, I have shared the URL as well. So yeah, see here now. So JavaScript library for building user interface. I have the image for you. I have the link for the same. Okay, you can use it in this way. And okay, this is for tomorrow's topic. I will show it tomorrow. Okay, so I'll share it again. So final thing. Okay, so please ask if you have any questions timely. Okay, in that same time. Okay, so that you can clear out all the doubts whenever you have. Okay, so don't hesitate to ask any questions. I'm ready to repeat it again. That's not an issue. Okay, yeah. Thank you guys. See you tomorrow. Have a great day. Bye bye.